Hi, I'm Master Sergeant Aaron Cattermas, trombone section leader with the United States Army Field Band.
And I'm Sergeant Major Mark Bowling, trombonist and brass group leader of the Field Band. On behalf of the trombone section, thanks for watching Trombone, A Player's Guide.
Throughout this program, we'll cover a variety of topics, from history and hardware to playing fundamentals and practice tips. The first-year beginner, the educator, and the serious trombone student have all been thought of in this project, and we're confident everyone will come away with something useful. And if you don't, blame him.
After watching the video, if you find yourself still looking for more, go to our website at www.armyfieldband.com. You'll find a list of music we've recorded here, printable, original compositions, and books and literature we refer to throughout the program. All are great resources for any trombonist or music educator.
All right, let's get started. At the beginning of each chapter, there's a musical example that introduces a different aspect of being a trombone player. If you want to skip the music to get into the instruction, simply skip to the next track. In the first chapter, Todd is going to take you through a quick history of the trombone. Thanks again for watching, and enjoy.
Hi, I'm Staff Sergeant Todd Sterniolo, and I'm the history fanatic of the trombone section. I've always found that learning the history of your instrument is a great way to educate yourself on performance practice and literature. The trombone has a long and rich history, and of all the instruments in the brass family, it's the one that has changed the least over the centuries. The trumpet, tuba, horn, and euphonium have all seen dramatic changes since their invention, but the trombone has always looked pretty much like this.
Thousands of years ago, we discovered that a fixed length of tubing, when blown through, produces a fixed series of pitches. A longer tube produces the same intervals but lower. A shorter tube produces the same intervals but higher. This sequence of intervals became known as the overtone series. Out of that discovery was born the brass family of musical instruments. Brass instruments all make use of the overtone series, and the earliest brass instruments were limited to only these notes. Over the centuries, people came up with various ways to overcome this obstacle, with mixed success. The earliest chromatic brass instrument to catch on made use of a telescoping slide, allowing the length of the instrument, and therefore the available pitches, to be changed very quickly. Eventually, the single slide evolved into the ancestor of the trombone, the sackbut. The sackbut was similar to the modern trombone, but with a smaller bell and producing a tighter, less resonant sound. Unlike other early brass instruments, the sackbut was capable of playing all 12 notes, which gave it much more potential as a musical instrument. In Renaissance-era Europe, while trumpets were used most often as a signaling tool, the sackbut was much more versatile, and by the late 14th century was often included in church music and in city and court ensembles, which were a mark of prosperity and status. The industrial age revolutionized the manufacturing practices of instrument makers. Slides became more refined and smooth. New alloys were employed to change timbre, and overall construction quality improved. As the instruments themselves improved, so did the technical facility of the brass musicians and the quality of the music written for them. Major composers started including trombone in their orchestrations. Mozart wrote for the trombone in his operas and in one of his greatest works, the Requiem Mass. Generations later, Beethoven, Brahms, Wagner, and Mahler would write some of their most powerful and distinctive work for the trombone section. The trombone had become a staple of the symphony orchestra. While the trombone had to fight for acceptance in the orchestra, it was much quicker to take its place in the wind band. Composers were writing for trombones in their wind pieces as far back as the French Revolution, when the modern concert band was just beginning to take shape. As European and American military bands grew in size and prominence, brass sections became much bigger and more diverse, some using slide trombones, others using valve trombones. All brass bands began to form, and by the mid-19th century, they were an integral part of American culture. By the turn of the 20th century, military and professional bands were everywhere, and like any art form, there were stars. By far the most famous bandleader of the day was the March King, John Philip Sousa, who directed the United States Marine Band before forming his own group in 1892. Even today, his influence on the military band cannot be overstated. Sousa's music is heard on more band concerts than any other composer, and the instrumentation he implemented in his bands has remained the standard for over 100 years. One of Sousa's most celebrated soloists was trombonist Arthur Pryor, who some called the Paganini of the trombone. Pryor was the trombone's first real superstar, single-handedly proving to an entire generation of trombonists what the instrument was capable of. Since the days of Arthur Pryor, the trombone has been an essential part of the orchestral, band, jazz, and commercial genres. You'll hear trombones in any symphonic movie score, any Broadway musical, and any big band in the world, as well as chamber music, rock music, gospel, and funk. The trombone has found its way into nearly every facet of Western music, and trombonists today are exploring unprecedented levels of skill and technique.
Hi, my name is Staff Sergeant Carmen Russo. Now you've heard a little about the trombone's history, what about the instruments we play today? Here they are. Now don't be intimidated, you don't have to buy all of these. One quality tenor trombone can last you a lifetime. Let's get to know each one and discuss their qualities. Aaron, what's this little guy?
Well, I'm a little embarrassed. I left it in the dryer and it shrunk.
Nice try. Really, what is it?
This is an alto trombone. It's pitched in E flat instead of B flat, so it sounds a perfect fourth above a tenor trombone. Let's play a tune so you can hear.
Sounds kind of light, almost like a French horn or something. Why would you use that?
The alto is used mainly in Baroque music, but Mozart, Schumann, Brahms, and lots of other major composers also wrote for it.
We call this a straight tenor, and it's obviously bigger than the alto. It has a bigger bore, a bigger bell, and it's well suited to jazz players. This horn sounds great in jazz ballads, swing tunes, and the blues.
If you need something a little bigger, you'd play this, a standard large bore tenor. It's bigger in bore and bell size, and most tenors have a valve section for extending the range down below the bass clef. It's great for band and orchestra, as well as solo work.
My trombone is a standard tenor too. What makes yours look so different from mine?
First, that valve section is a Thayer, or axial flow valve. It puts fewer kinks in the airstream, so there's less resistance. You also have a yellow brass bell instead of the red brass on mine. The valve I have is probably more common and works just fine. It all depends on the player.
To each their own, I guess. But make sure you do put some research and some thought into what kind of trombone you might want.
Look at that thing.
That's right. There's one left. My name is Staff Sergeant Wes Ballinger, and this is a bass trombone. It has a much bigger bell, a larger bore, and 2 valves. This combination gives the bass trombone a unique sound. The range isn't much different than the tenor trombone, but it's better suited to the low range and is especially good at generating power. The bass trombone plays a variety of roles. Sometimes it functions as a third tenor trombone, sometimes it bridges the gap between trombone and tuba, and sometimes it just has to dominate.
Look at all of these instruments. How did we choose these? It's all about personal preference. When you go out to look at trombones, don't just pick up anything and start blowing. Look it over, like a new car. No dents, no rattles, everything fits in your hands, and the mouthpiece fits in the receiver. Play some long tones, move the slide, play a melody or two to get a feel for it. If you can, compare multiple copies of the same model of trombone. No 2 trombones play alike, even if they look identical. There are even companies out there who will build you a custom trombone. Our best advice is to ask your private teacher or music teacher where to start. Everyone is different and has different needs. The same applies to mouthpieces too.
One last thing we need to talk about is mutes. Most commonly, we use these, straight mutes. Sometimes you'll see muted, straight mute, concertino, or mitdampfer in your part. They all mean the same thing. Put this in your bell. Listen to the sound it makes.
Cup mutes are also used frequently, so it's good to have one. The music will specifically call for a cup mute if it's needed.
I like all the fun mutes, plungers, harmons, and buckets. We use these mostly in jazz or commercial music. There's no need to buy them all right now, but you can get a plunger pretty cheap at the hardware store.
Remember, these are just accessories. The main thing is to get a good trombone and to get to work practicing. All right, guys, I think that's about all the equipment my brain can handle for one day. Next, we'll play 3 short pieces featuring a different trombone on each. See if you can identify them.
The next few minutes are meant for beginners with little experience playing or caring for their trombone. So if you're already well versed in trombone care or not a trombonist at all, feel free to skip ahead to Chapter 5, Sound Production. Let's start with basic assembly. First, connect the bell section to the slide section, making sure the connector is tight. If it's not, the bell section could move around and possibly damage the slide. Once the horn is put together, make sure the slide lock is on so the slide doesn't fall. Attach your mouthpiece with a gentle twist. Hold the bell section with your left hand and the slide with your right. Make an L with your left hand, put your index finger on the mouthpiece, and wrap your thumb around the brace or F attachment trigger. Don't hold the instrument too tightly. Any unnecessary tension will affect your sound. When gripping the slide, position your thumb and fingers like this. Knowing how to keep an instrument in working order is important for any instrumentalist, but for a trombonist, it's even more important. Even a slide that works perfectly takes more effort to use than an instrument with keys or valves. And if the slide is dirty or damaged, the extra effort it will take to use it will make your body tense, and every aspect of your technique will suffer. To prevent the slide from holding you back, keep it perfectly clean and lubricated. To clean your trombone, start by partially filling the outer slide with warm water. Next, run a cleaning snake through both the inner and outer slides until clean. Use a metal rod with an attached cloth to dry the outer slide. Be sure to hold on to the edge of the cloth so it doesn't get stuck in the slide. Next, wipe the inner slide clean with a soft cloth. Once the inner slide is dry, apply a thin coat of slide cream to the bottom part of the slide and spread it out as evenly as possible. Work the cream into the outer slide by inserting one side at a time and twisting it. Repeat on the other side. Finally, put both sides back together and move it around a bit. Some people use a silicone lubricant in addition to slide cream to make it move even more easily. Apply like so, and use a spray bottle to keep the slide moving freely. The next two areas on the trombone that need lubrication are the tuning slide and the valves. The tuning slide needs a thin layer of tuning slide grease. Work it onto the slide in the same way we did the main slide. Valve maintenance is much simpler. Simply squirt some rotary valve oil into the F attachment tuning slide and move the valve until it moves freely or the noise goes away. There are several brands of oil for this. For your F attachment valve, I recommend you use a very thin oil. You can also put a few dabs of oil on the outside hardware of the valve, like so. Remember, an instrument that's clean and well oiled is essential to learning effortless technique. An instrument that works against you is only hampering your development as a player. Keeping up with simple maintenance will make practicing as easy as possible, and just as important, will ensure that your instrument never surprises you during a performance.
This chapter will focus on a very important skill for any musician, sound production. We'll go over a basic mouthpiece exercise, and you'll learn some great breathing exercises that we've found helpful over the years.
On any brass instrument, the airflow is the fundamental element of a good sound. It's the control center for everything you do. By adjusting the airflow, you can change the sound from loud to soft make the sound more intense or mellow. The air combined with the tongue can make the connections between your notes smooth and delicate, or harsh and brittle. A good way to get a sense of how the airstream is involved in the process is to watch a cellist or bassist play. The bow on the strings is used the way the airstream is on a brass instrument. So, the way a string player puts a lot of thought into his bow, the brass player must do the same with his air. Watch as Master Sergeant Jeff Lopez demonstrates a legato style and a staccato style. Next, we'll learn some breathing exercises that will help us to increase the capacity of our lungs and to improve our air control. Generally, people use only a fraction of their lung capacity for normal breathing. To play any brass instrument, you need to efficiently use as much of your lung capacity as you can. Stand up or sit on the edge of your chair and take some big, full breaths, filling your lungs from the bottom up. Stay relaxed and don't let your shoulders come up. Now, we'll do a cool exercise that will immediately improve your air intake. Start by getting rid of all of your breath. Then, as you are about to breathe back in, put the back of your hand firmly against your mouth to block your airway. Then, while still maintaining suction on your hand, quickly pull it away. This should automatically send all that air rushing down to the bottom of your lungs. Here's another exercise. You'll have to stand for this one. Bend at the waist like you're taking a deep bow. As you bend down, exhale all of your air. Now, at a relaxed pace, come back up to a standing position. As you come back up, take a nice big breath. You'll notice the air you breathe in goes to the bottom of your lungs, enabling you then to top off the upper part of your lungs with even more air. Do this a few times and get used to the feeling of filling up from the bottom. Then, take some full breaths without bending over and try to recreate that feeling. All good brass players understand the importance of breathing, and there are lots of great resources for breathing exercises out there. One of the most popular is the Breathing Gym. It was developed by Sam Palafian and Pat Sheridan, and many people use it regularly to help them increase their lung capacity and air control.
Finally, there are lots of gadgets available that you can use to measure lung capacity and test airflow. Things like inspirometers, breathing bags, breath builders, even simple breathing tubes. Do you need them in order to become a great trombone player? No, not necessarily. Some of them are interesting just for tracking progress, but all you really need to do is work on your breathing and continue to try increasing your lung capacity so you can make the most of the air that you have.
Next, we're going to learn a simple way to get a good buzz on the mouthpiece. First, put your finger up to your lips as if you were saying shh. Now, keeping your finger on your lips, blow air out around it. Do this a few times to get a feel for it. This time, while keeping your corners firm, pull your finger away from your lips as you continue to blow. When you pull your finger away, the air should naturally focus to the center of your lips where your finger was. Next, we're going to buzz our lips. Go through the previous steps, and at the end, when you are blowing out your air, start to bring your lips closer together very slowly. They'll reach a point when they should start to buzz. Don't stand too close to anyone while you're doing this. You might blow spit on them, and nobody likes that. Now, hold your mouthpiece with your index finger and thumb, like this, and gently place it on your lips. Remember to keep your cheeks from puffing out, and do the same buzzing you did before. It should sound something like this. Pretty cool, huh? Now it's time to add the trombone. Put your mouthpiece into the trombone, giving it a little twist. Bring up your trombone, take a nice deep breath, and buzz into the mouthpiece like you did before. Hopefully, you'll get a big, beautiful sound. If it doesn't work right away, don't get discouraged. As we all know, being a musician is all about practice.
Most athletes stretch their muscles before the big game, and brass players need to stretch theirs as well. The warm-up is an important part of a musician's playing day. There are as many warm-ups in the world as there are brass players. Some warm-ups are short and to the point, others are long and methodical.
Whatever your preferences, you should do some sort of warm-up before doing any heavy playing. Personally, I like to start my warm-up with long tones. It's a simple way to warm up your horn, wake up your embouchure, and get your air moving. Throughout this section, we'll be showing these exercises on screen and play short examples for you. If you'd like the full examples, you can download them from our website. Let's get started. Follow along as Todd plays this first example. When you become comfortable with that partial, move up to the next one and repeat to all 7 positions. The next exercise involves playing sustained notes in between partials. Now that your horn is warm and your embouchure is ready, it's time to play some scales. It's essential to memorize all of your scales, so it's probably a good idea to include them in your daily routine. This example includes one major, one minor, and one chromatic scale. You can download a more complete collection of scales from armyfieldband.com. Another great warm-up tool, and one of the best ways to increase your range, is the lip slur. Here are a few to include in your warm-up. Follow along as Todd plays this first example. Now, let's try a different one and increase the range a bit. For the next example, let's go a bit faster and on a higher triad. The last exercise that we will play covers an even broader range. These exercises are just basic examples of a warm-up routine. Like we said, a warm-up is a personal thing, and you should experiment with it to see what works best for you. There are plenty of ways to make it more interesting. For example, the Michael Davis 15 and 20-minute warm-up routines are accompanied by a recorded rhythm section. It's a creative way to break up the monotony and a great way to work on your tuning. Here's a slightly more difficult lip slurs exercise in octaves called Octaflex.
Articulation, or tonguing, is one of the most fundamental aspects of a brass player's technique. The tongue is what separates note from note and enables you to produce a variety of connections in the musical line. With time and practice, articulation can be the most versatile tool a trombonist has in his possession.
Strong airflow is essential for good articulation. If you don't keep the air moving, the sound will get pinched and weak, and good articulation will be much more difficult. Another essential aspect of articulation is timing. When your tongue creates the articulation, your slide must already be in the right place. If the slide is still moving when you tongue a note, the pitch will move along with it.
With practice, your air, tongue, and slide will learn to cooperate, creating a smooth, uninterrupted musical line. Listen as Todd plays a few bars of an excerpt. See if you can identify the problems with what Todd is doing. His tone sounded pinched, His slide was sloppy, and his tongue isn't moving at the same time as his slide. Now let's hear the difference when he coordinates his airflow, slide, and tongue.
Tongued notes, or those without a slur line, are played with the syllable ta. Practice playing whole notes, beginning each note with a T and releasing after 4 beats. Then move on to quarter notes, 4 per pitch, and eventually 8th and 16th notes as you get more consistent. Arbin's complete method for trombone has an extensive section on improving articulation and is highly recommended.
As trombone players, we have a unique challenge in playing slurs. We can't just push down a valve like other brass players. Trombonists create the illusion of a slur by tonguing very lightly, replacing the syllable ta with the syllable da. Listen as Todd plays 2 scales, one articulated, one slurred. If you noticed, the beginning of each note was crisp when tongued and smooth when slurred. There is one other way to slur some intervals. It's called natural slurring. If you've ever heard a bugle call, you've heard a natural slur. It's when you move from one pitch to another using just your embouchure, not your tongue. On the trombone, we can play stepwise motion and intervals using natural slurs. Listen. All of this takes time and practice. The natural slurs we just heard are just like the lip slurs we talked about during our warm-ups. We're taking those same principles and applying them while the slide is moving.
The way I've always thought about tonguing and slurring is like a sheet of paper that's been perforated. The sheet of paper is your airstream, and those little perforations in the paper are where your tongue would touch the roof of your mouth. The sheet of paper is still whole, just like your airstream is continuous, and the perforation, just like your articulation, is consistent and even.
All of these different aspects of brass playing come down to one thing: air. When you have a good flow of air established, everything becomes much easier.
To build speed, I came up with my own exercise. You can do the same thing at home. Just combine simple rhythms together and make sure you use your metronome to keep it even. Follow along as I increase the speed of my articulations. Set the metronome faster and do it again. Pretty soon you'll be lightning quick. I'm sure the question in your mind is, how do I learn to play that fast? The answer, as it is with most playing issues, is hours and hours of practice. If you want to learn that last piece, you'll be applying many of those hours to multiple tonguing.
When a passage of notes is too fast for you, the solution is multiple tonguing. There are 2 kinds, double tonguing and triple tonguing.
When playing a fast passage, instead of just using the ta syllable, it's easier to use ta and ka together. On ta, the tip of the tongue strikes just behind the teeth, and on ka, the tongue strikes further back in the mouth. In double tonguing, the player says ta-ka-ta-ka-ta. In triple tonguing, the player says ta-ta-ka, ta-ta-ka-ta. Remember, good airflow first. Begin by articulating ta-ta-ka repeatedly on a single pitch. The tendency is to rush the ka syllable, but over time, it will even out. Practice double tonguing in the same way, using the pattern ta-ka-ta-ka-ta. Arbin's book contains a great section on multiple tonguing and is a great way to study the technique.
Try this next exercise. We'll start with triple tonguing. On middle F, play 4 quarters, 4 eighth note triplets, and finally 8 16th note triplets. Play the triplets using ta-ta-ka or ta-ka-ta. Repeat on an E and go down to a C chromatically. Then move from F chromatically up to B flat. When you get comfortable with it, increase the tempo.
The same exercise can be done for double tonguing. Starting on F, play 4 quarters, 8 eighths, and double tongue 16 16ths using ta-ka-ta-ka-ta. One last articulation to mention is doodle tonguing. It's a great way for jazz players to play fast licks without sounding too percussive. Almost like having a valve trombone. If you're interested, you can check out our website for a list of method books.
Just remember, the key to good articulation is maintaining good airflow. After that, it's just moving the slide and tongue together and knowing which type of articulation to use.
Slow and steady practice is the best way to master it all, from simple tonguing to advanced techniques.
As you already heard from Todd and Wes, good slide technique is critical. Unlike valves, a slide does not interrupt the flow of air on its own, so the player creates an interruption or articulation to avoid smearing notes together. Before we get much further, we should take a quick moment to talk about the proper way to grip the slide. Grip the slide brace between your thumb and first 2 fingers. This does 2 things. First, it automatically positions the wrist in such a way that will allow a very fluid slide action. Secondly, it allows for more speed for those quick passages.
Good technique basically boils down to timing. You must learn to time the articulation to coincide with correct placement of the slide. A good exercise for improving slide technique is an exercise developed by Edward Kleinhammer, former bass trombonist with the Chicago Symphony. It consists of alternately articulating a very short note, in a major scale for instance, and moving the slide very quickly to the next note at a moderate tempo of quarter equals 120. Note, move, note, move, etc. The point of this exercise is to have a visual aid to help develop timing. It allows you to see that the slide should already be in the correct position before you play the next note. After mastering a passage at a slower tempo, gradually increase the tempo and you'll be well on your way to better slide technique.
Getting comfortable with your alternate positions is another great way to improve slide technique. It actually decreases the distance between two pitches on the slide, which makes any passage easier to play.
Using alternate positions can be compared to traveling between 2 points. Obviously, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Anything other than a straight line will be longer. Using alternate positions allows the player to move the slide less in order to play a given passage. Not using them requires more slide movement to play the same passage. So, by increasing efficiency, technique will also improve.
Aaron and I will now play a passage in unison, but Aaron will play it using standard positions, and I'll use the alternate positions. See how much easier it looks. There are several method books that will aid in further developing slide technique, but there is one that every trombonist should have, the Arbin's book. It's filled to the brim with exercises for all areas of playing, but particularly slide technique, and it will keep you busy for a very long time. The original book was written for cornet, so make sure you get the trombone version.
The key to good intonation is having a well-trained ear. Just like making a good sound and developing your sense of rhythm, it takes some work. Fortunately, training your ear can be a lot more enjoyable. If you've ever listened to music, you've spent time on ear training.
When you're learning any instrument, spend some time listening to that instrument. If you're learning to play jazz, listen to more jazz. Try to think about what you're listening to, whether it's rock, swing, classical, or hip-hop. Listen for more than just a melody or words. What's the bass doing? What chords are the keyboards or guitars playing?
Take it a step further and see if you can play along. If you have the radio going, just play a few notes and see where they fit in. If you can figure out a couple of melodies, chord progressions, horn licks, or bass lines, crank up the volume and play along.
The building blocks of music are chords. With wind instruments, it's not as simple as pushing down a button or moving a slide to the right spot. Playing in harmony is a lot different than playing unison notes in tune. There are unique tendencies for every interval and chord.
Test the different note tendencies with a friend. Watch here as Carmen plays a descending B-flat scale while Aaron holds a low B-flat. Notice how he makes slight adjustments with his slide to get the fewest number of waves in the sound. Look at how far he has to adjust the slide for the G to ring with the B flat. The same G by itself would register pretty flat on his tuner. Does that make Carmen out of tune? Absolutely not. Just because a tuner tells you your note is in tune doesn't mean you're in tune with people around you. One of the great things about music is that it's not an exact science. In the end, all that really matters is how it sounds.
With the trombone, this process of adjusting is very easy. Sure, we have a tuning slide behind the bell, but we also have the largest tuning slide of any instrument, 26 inches long to be exact. Because we have the ability to fix things on the fly, our ears become our biggest asset.
A tuner can be a helpful tool for individual practice. It can help you develop the muscle memory necessary for finding accurate places for second, third, and all of the other positions. But if you don't have a well-developed sense of pitch, just knowing the positions won't get you very far.
Let's step up the difficulty level. Try this exercise with 2 other musicians. They don't even have to be trombone players. Start with a B-flat major chord, with the lowest player on a low B-flat, the second person on an F, and the third person on a D above middle B-flat. Hold the chord until it's locked in. When everyone's in the right spot, you should hear the chord ring. If you're doing it correctly, the person playing the F is raising the pitch slightly, and the person on the D, the third of the major chord, is playing a bit lower than they normally would.
Once that B-flat major chord locks in, the top voice will move down a half step to D-flat, making it a B-flat minor chord. The minor third will have to pull up for the chord to ring. Next, the person holding the F moves down a half step to F-flat or E, creating a more challenging chord, the diminished, B-flat, D-flat, and F-flat. Finally, the lower voice moves down a half step from B-flat to A, getting back to our comfortable major chord. You can repeat this process going as high or as low as you want to go. Watch as we work together to lock in these 3 types of chords.
Trombonists use 2 types of vibrato, slide vibrato and lip vibrato. If these sound self-explanatory, it's because they are.
Slide vibrato is exactly that, moving the slide in and out quickly to create vibrato. Slide vibrato is primarily used in jazz and commercial styles, but in some instances it's also appropriate in classical solo literature. The mechanics of slide vibrato are fairly simple. While holding a long note, move the slide in and out at the desired pace and distance to determine the quality of vibrato. Moving the slide a large amount will result in a correspondingly wide vibrato. Moving the slide quickly will result in a faster vibrato.
The other type of vibrato is lip vibrato. In a nutshell, the best way to execute lip vibrato is to say the syllables tu, woo, woo while playing a long note. In general, the pitch should be bent down and then back up to where you started.
Remember, vibrato is a tool that can be used to enhance style and color of sound, but it is not essential. It should only be used if strong playing fundamentals are already in place. While vibrato can be fun to experiment with, its use can help develop a much more important skill, versatility. Versatility is one of the most important skills you can develop as a musician.
To become a versatile musician, you must get exposure to as many different styles as possible. Listening to recordings is vital and incredibly effective, but it's not the only way to broaden your horizons. Playing in a broad range of ensembles is a hands-on way of becoming musically well-rounded.
Playing convincingly in many different styles will not only make music more fun and satisfying for you, it will vastly improve your marketability if you decide to play professionally. You'll set yourself apart from other players who may not have developed the skills that you have.
In the U.S. Army Field Band, we are called on to play a wide variety of styles on every concert. We play everything from classic rock to opera, from Baroque transcriptions to Afro-Cuban. The members of the field band have played in opera orchestras, blues bands, jazz bands, and chamber ensembles, and all of these experiences make them valuable as musicians.
Well, now that we've talked up versatility so much, we're going to play 3 original pieces written by members of the Army Field Band.
If you want to try these pieces out for yourself, you can download them for free at armyfieldband.com. On behalf of the United States Army Field Band, thanks for watching our video. We're glad to have the opportunity to help educate the next generation of players.
Again, if you want to hear more music, look up resources, or email us questions, go to our website at www.armyfieldband.com.
Does anyone have any parting advice?
Practice hard.
Listen constantly.
Breathe a lot.
Play really, really loud.
Thanks again, and good luck.